Arsenal are a serious club. As it stands, one of the best in the world. As it stands, the best in England. Question is, how serious are they? And I feel like I've got key points to break down for you guys, and about 6, 7 different ones. And I'm hoping it explains a lot and makes a lot of sense. But before you do that, if you don't mind, small little favor, smash the likes, subscribe if you're brand new. And if you agree or disagree, get in the comments. Why not? Because, like, you might want to add your own points. Why not? Add on to everything. But let's start with the most obvious one, right? Other than the evolution of Gyökeres, no. No, he had a great game against Burnley. I must admit, it was his best game. I've just watched the highlights, the extended highlights. I didn't catch the game as Manchester United were on. I'm not going to sell you lot a dream. And of course, I saw, Declan Rice. Every time I try to like nitpick at this guy, yeah, he's moving. He's definitely playing a lot better than I expected for this season like that. But regardless, let's get into it. Let's talk about the most obvious one for me. Number one, I've wrote down a few things, but defensive evolution is definitely the most obvious, right? So I don't have to tell you, but Arsenal have become far more pragmatic and disciplined in their structure, in their defense, right? Last season, you're pressing high, play beautifully. They were easy to hit in transition. This year, Arteta's made them, way more compact, way more physical, hard to break down. Really and truly, it's like a hybrid of Guardiola's positional play and Simeone's like defensive still. And if you want to go off the statistics as well, they're controlling fewer big chances and controlling games with more maturity is the best. I think that's the best way to describe it. And this year, we get into a part where it's not even about how good the back two are. We're talking about the unit, the back five, including the goalkeeper, or the back six even, if you want to include the DM. But really and truly, it's the team. The team working for one another. And in that defensive maturity as a structure, as a team and a unit, we're getting to a point where you've only conceded 3 goals in the Premier League. I think it's 7 clean sheets in 7 games now. I think the last goal that you can see in the Premier League was actually against a free kick, which was Szoboszlai. So that's not even open play. Correct me if I'm wrong. And then in the Champions League, I think you're running something like 9 games as well, with clean sheets at home, something like that, along them lines. It's getting to a point where fans are now talking about how many shots you're conceding per game. And it's down to a minimal that, I'd be stressed if we, example, there's a shot on target. Do you get my drift? And that's showing real, for me, that's really showing a lot of a let's call it a defensive evolution compared to the year like last year, where it looked a little bit too defensive, a little bit more controlled, in terms of the other side in the other year. But you had an injury which made the biggest difference in your back line. I believe it might have been, was it Gabriel or Saliba? And then obviously the first year was more gung-ho type football. But yeah, my second one that I wrote down is, it's more control over chaos, You don't need to play at 100 mile per hour anymore, just try to get a goal. Arsenal slow the games down, suffocate opponents with structure. I think exactly what we were just saying, and you know what? One thing that Wenger never did was, how to win ugly when you have to. You can feel the emotion, the emotional maturity. If we're gonna latch onto the first point, and they've learned how to suffer in games and still get the result, and that's how I kind of view this Arsenal. And you know what? Best kind of way to kind of look at that is old Manchester United teams as well. If we're gonna go off a little bit evidence, a little bit Mourinho in there, and you know what? Like, having more control over chaos, it kind of reminds me when I ask Arsenal fans, what was your best or favorite moments in terms of Arteta? What was your best season? And they all say when the first year, when Declan Rice arrived, that was the best balance. That was the best Arsenal side, not the first one, not the electrifying one where you scoring pretty much every 2 minutes, and it was difficult to stop at that. But you did have obviously leaks at the back, and you know what? And Gabriel and Saliba were definitely up and coming at that point. They weren't the final or finished products that they are at the moment. Another point I was going to make, my third point, I'm actually wrote it down. And you know what? Watching more of Rice today kind of just proves my point. You can tell where I'm heading with this, but Rice has changed everything. And I mean everything, right? The midfield dynamic is so key. And we always say, what's Arsenal's best midfield? Some may say Partey. But if someone ever looked at the games with Jorginho in there and, and Rice, you would say they were the best complementary pairing that Arsenal had. That really benefited the team, passing forward and whatnot. But so that's a big credit to Zubimendi. But Rice, he's the balance. A destroyer, a progressor. His presence allows Ødegaard. And at the moment, even though he's been injured, he's kind of allowing Eze to have that little bit more of a free role in that 10 to do what he needs to do, whilst Ødegaard is out. So he's allowing a lot of other players to play a lot higher up, especially this season. I feel like as much as Rice is, look, there's a lot of debate with him and Caicedo. Everyone knows my preference would definitely be Caicedo. But to not mention that Rice is one of the better centre mids in the Premier League right now is absolutely an atrocity of an opinion. And that's just my opinion on their opinions. I'm not trying to school it. I'm not trying to police it. But the man is the leader. And you know what? In high pressure games, he's clutch. You can't say he goes missing. And I think he's Arsenal's next captain. I'm so serious. I really do think he is. I feel like that's an underrated quality. Something that I liked in someone like Jordan Henderson. But the difference is, I feel like Rice is 10 times the player Jordan Henderson is. But you guys would take a Jordan Henderson any day if it meant you win a league, right? So, and you know what? It took how long for Henderson to even get a title Premier League under Klopp? He signed in 2011. But that's just that. But, and the other one, my number 4 was Arteta's tactical flexibility. And what I was kind of writing down is like, the stubbornness seems to have kind of gone. And I've mentioned this in previous videos. And it's quite evident to see for anyone. Don't call it a glazing effect. Don't say, oh, what you're doing, you're being a Terry Flewers or whatnot. But the thing is, me and Terry probably look at football roughly the same. I don't have to overdo it. But you can definitely see the tactical flexibility in Arteta's game right now, in his man management even. So if you want to include all of that, the shape is rarely changed, or, like last season compared to this season. But right now he's adapting, changing players in different positions. I said this again. I was going to mention it. He trusts the squad. And I think that's the main part. He trusts everyone to do the job who he puts on that field. And he probably feels like this is the team that no matter who he asks, they'll perform that role to a degree that he's happy or satisfied with. Using inverted fullbacks and traditional ones is depending on the matchup. Calafiori, Lewis Skelly, Timbers, and obviously White's about to get to some sort of fitness, tweaking pressing traps as well. Has anyone noticed that one? And obviously rotating smartly, which you kind of went off. But these are my bullet points just to keep intensity just high. You can even see today in Burnley game, just kept putting Marinos on, Norgard's on. He's the one that's got to get up to motion, He's managing the game, not just the philosophy. So that is, for me, that is huge, which is producing my next point, which is the mentality shift. You can see that where Arsenal have missed out on a title a couple of times, gone to a semi-final in a Champions League, nearly their merchants pretty much. There's a new ruthlessness. Arsenal ain't just trying to play well. They're trying to win. And you can see it in their celebrations as well, how much it means. If you're a winner and have been there before, you'd understand what I mean by that. The defensive recoveries, they're cheering for that. The reactions to setbacks, they've got a bit of that champions arrogance, you could say, within the fans as well. They're kind of like that City and, the peak Liverpool kind of had. It's quite, and if I want to go back to, Man United, then allow me in it. That's what I think. But the main part is obviously you need to win leagues and to win any sort of cups. You need squad depth and you need competition. You can look at Arsenal's squad right now, and everyone anyone that comes off the bench is like a class replacement. The fact that you got a Skelly, young player from Hell's End as well, Waneri's, Marino's to come on to play that striker, or Havertz ain't back yet. Ødegaard's not even there yet. Declan Rice can fill in the 6 if need be. You got Eze that can play in the 8 left wing. There's so many. The squad depth is ruthless, and you know what? Big credit to Berta coming in. That might be the best signing Arsenal have made in a while. So, before, when you're having like Tomiyasu's never available, Zinchenko never available, these days White never available, you got players that are fit, available, and quality. Right now the movement between Trossard and Martinelli, I think the squad depth and how Arteta views that, they're now using Martinelli to as a super sub more than anything, and letting Trossard be the starter, because if someone's going to produce the low block, which most teams do, he's going to be the one that's going to find the answer more than Martinelli. Until Ødegaard comes back, we'll see how that changes, you know. And you know what? My last point is, and I wrote this down, and I have to say it word for word for what I wrote down. I feel like you're learning from City, and I'm not saying that you're copying them, right? So that's a key part in all of this, from what I'm saying. The fact that Arteta is also a student of Pep, he's a student of Moyes, and he's a student of Wenger. He's got a bit of everything going on at the moment, you could say, right? And this is exactly what I wrote in my notes. Arsenal are becoming City-like without copying City. They've absorbed the lessons, control the tempo, manage transitions, and dominate territory, but with more aggression and directness in attack. And that's something exactly like City, but in my opinion, not quite like them. He's got a style, and it's not exactly copying Pep. Remember that? Copying Pep? And you know what? Even if it's through set pieces at the moment as well, through another way of attacking, you've got to use football to their advantages. And I think he's using them to their advantages. Right now, we're in a game where set pieces are key. So that's Arteta's favour. Direct football is the in thing. Thank God. More goals and everything like that. And you know what? He's got defenders that can just flipping do the first thing that you need defenders to do. Defend. Whoop-de-doo. Who thought that would get you some clean sheets rather than these fannies that, you know, just are better at passing the ball from the back rather than actually defending? Who would have thought? Football, eh? Hard game. But anyways, people, make sure you smash the likes. Subscribe if you're brand new. If you like this kind of breakdown that I've kind of given, yeah, just give me a like. I mean, subscribe, yeah, all of that good stuff. Leave me a comment, you know, but this is serious now. You know, Arsenal currently as it stands, if I'm correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know what the table's looking like, but Bournemouth have got Man City today. And by the time some of you might have watched this, it could have ended. But if they get a draw, let's be real. We're not counting Bournemouth as a title rival, but City will go on 17 points. Man United's on 17 points. Tottenham's on 17 points. Chelsea's on 17 points. Liverpool are the only ones now that are just a little bit above. But I believe they're on 18 points. I think if you go there, I think you're on 25 or 26. About 7-8 points clear. Liverpool got Man City next week. Make of that information how you wish. In a bit.